What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Chocolate Saint, Sleeping Warrior, Flatzoid, and I don't know if I've missed anybody. Is that everybody, hopefully, in the G+? How are you all doing?
Good afternoon, hello.
Good morning, Nathan, and greeting to the audience.
I did miss someone, Mr. Arwin.
Morning.
Hey, Arwin.
He says that felt like we were in school.
Hey, Arwin.
Hello.
Hello. And we've also been joined by a whole bunch of people in Discord. Hello, Discord server.
Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Oakley.
Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Oakley. Right, I'll just take the register.
Yeah. Chocolate. Yeah, chocolate.
Present, sir.
Excellent. All present and correct. So, over the last week, and indeed for the next week, at least part of it, we'll be covering an individual housekeeping question. So, Monday we covered the physical reified edge of a sphere. Tuesday we covered Earth curvature in general. Yesterday we covered axial rotation. And today we're going to cover the scientific validity to the assertion we have gravity. Now, I've said gravity is a single word as opposed to a gravitational force, but that's where we're going to be starting. So before we do, is there anybody, only Discord, pipe down in the G+, anybody who does actually have, or thinks they have, any scientific evidence for gravity?
Come on, Discord. Everyone's got to have gravity evidence because you all believe it's vehemently, right? There's got to be some evidence for it. Can we see it? Come on, someone say Cavendish. Just let's start the show.
Michelle.
Oh, Julio, did you send me that graffiti art? Thank you very much. Hear me?
So nobody even wants to mention Henry Cavendish then, no?
They know it's false, that's why.
It's all right. Anthony's looking to be led. I believe there's an assertion that gravity is proven by an experiment known as the Cavendish experiment, Anthony. There you go.
Really? Let's start with the definition for what gravity is. According to the current position in science, it is defined, and we'd like to know what that definition is, please, Nathan.
Shout out to Anthony Burrows for hitting the super chat. Thank you very much for your support. No, let's not define it, because that would take us immediately away from my 100-year-old out-of-date rhetoric that you've asked me to give you. So, Newtonian Cavendish would be mass attracting mass, Anthony. We all know that, obviously.
Oh, right. So in 1915, Nathan, the position changed and it was no longer mass attracted mass. In 1915, Einstein superseded Newton by introducing and publishing his document called The Theory of General Relativity, in which he defined gravity to be, quote, the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. So given that his current position is the position adopted by science at the moment, how does the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass have anything to do with a man in a shed with some balls?
Oh, it doesn't. I am, as a globe head with this hat on, simply stupid and 100 years out of date. Thank you so much for correcting me, Anthony. So what you're essentially saying is, when I say mass attracting mass and cite Cavendish, that's not only 100 years out of date, but it's in defiance of the current pseudoscience pretender clown rhetoric of sphericity and heliocentricity that asserts that the distribution of mass causes the bending of space-time, otherwise known as pseudo-Ramonian force space, length, breadth, depth and time. So the current rhetoric is space-time bending, as opposed to mass attracting mass. My bad. I was just wrong when I asserted as a globehead that it's mass attracting mass. I was just stupid in that assertion. Sorry.
Now,
Nathan, you won't make a good glober because you're conceding too much.
Yeah. Now, this is where, because I've got this little bit of narcissistic trait in this topic, right? I quite like them begging the question and start talking about forces and all that nonsense to do with Cavendish and all that. But it pisses people off. And I don't mean to piss people off, but I quite like it because I like to hear them start wiggle, right? Because I like the discussion on gravity. But if we're going to kill gravity from the start, that's how you do it. You get them to define it. And if they define it, they've got to give you the current position. And the current position is the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. The conversation is over. It stops.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, if mass attracted mass, wouldn't mass just always attract mass? So, if that was the first theory, why would they get rid of that to supersede it with another one? Would that suggest that mass doesn't attract mass?
Let him answer.
Oh, okay.
Let him answer. Say again, Anthony.
Because mass doesn't attract mass. That's the reason why. There was no evidence to support the assertion, and it had to fail for some reason. Who cares what they made it, why they changed it? But Einstein published a document in 1915, and at the moment, it's the currently accepted science. So this is their story. It's not our story, but we will make them cite back their story, because if they don't cite back their story, we're arguing about a position that isn't even the current science. So let's not do that, even though it might be fun. And we're playing with food before we kill it, like an orca whale does, and then they don't even eat it; they just kill it for the fun of it. We could do that, and we could argue about Cavendish and all that stuff, and we've done it show after show after show. But if we want to kill the argument right at the start, ask them for the definition. Make sure they mention the word effect, because they always miss that out when they'll talk about bendy space-time, and they'll put it in that context, bendy space-time, but they'll deliberately miss off the word effect, and that's the bit that's the word that we need them to cite back, because it is their current science. And when they say it's an effect, we all know that if it was a cause, they would say it was a cause, but it's not, it's an effect. So the effect that they need can't cause anything, because otherwise it would be a cause. So the meanings of words then becomes important, and the conversation stops.
All right.
But it's boring.
Can I ask a question maybe about
So-
gravity? To
Yeah.
you, Tony?
Yes,
Because I think
yes.
you probably know it.
Go ahead, Owen.
Right. So you've always said, and we've always basically said, like, okay, Einsteinian gravity superseded it according to science, right? Who established that? How was that decided upon? How was it decided that the science narrative would change? How did that exactly happen at the time?
Einstein.
Was there even a uniform decision about it? Because I remember having seen like a news article that basically saying that a huge preponderance of physicists adamantly opposed Einstein as a scientist in general.
You're right. He was opposed, but for whatever reason, it's become accepted, right?
Yeah, but that's not that. No. But that's the
Let
thing.
me answer him.
You say
Anthony.
that.
Owen, I'll
How
answer you.
was it?
I'm
who
trying to answer.
decided?
Trying to answer you because it got published.
Yeah, but
You know the peer review
the
process.
university decided.
It went through the process that they call science. It's not science. It's men, but it went through that process. Got published. That's it. And then
So it's peer reviewed, as it were.
yeah,
I mean.
but upon
It was
publication,
peer reviewed, and a lot of people agreed. So it was almost like a democratic vote,
Yeah, I guess.
like that.
However,
I wanted to basically point that out, how it was even established. So,
yeah. So, however it was established and accepted is not our position; it's their position. But we want them to at least cite us back the current narrative. So, if they're going to claim that gravity is something, just ask them for a definition and make them say the words verbatim, because it's an effect. It's an effect caused by the uneven distribution of mass, whatever that means, and you can start arguing about it. But the minute they say it's an effect caused by the uneven distribution of mass, they've then got to formulate it to explain whatever it is that they're claiming Newton's apple fell off the tree for, or whatever. Apply it to whatever nonsense they're going to apply it to, but make them define it. Once they define it, make sure it's accurate, and then it stops.
I get it. So I have another question concerning this, since we're going so deep into gravity now. Is it even officially recognized? I guess it is peer reviewed. It was kind of like decided upon through publication, as you said. But if you, for example, go to a physics university, you know, and you're like really into gravity and into Newton and stuff, and you try to figure out your own view of gravity. Hey, a lot of people do this, you know. I used to do that. It's like I can figure out what this freaking gravity is everybody's talking about, you know. So you go to a physics teacher and you basically say, yeah, gravity, if it's a force like this and that, will every single teacher then officially respond, but gravity is not a force? Or is it still, because beside the peer reviewing, is it still basically open for contest officially?
Depends on the level.
How do people go about with
Will
it?
this question ever end? It depends on the level. If you're at A level, they'll tell you gravity's a force. I believe it's still the case at GCSE level. So they'll teach you Cavendish. They'll get you to do it. Well, as soon as you
And this
progress...
is the problem. This is the problem.
Wait.
If they're teaching you that gravity's a force, even though it's not been a force for 100 years, that you have to ask the question, well, why are they getting taught this? Because if it's not the current position, it just so happens to be convenient, and the maths happens to work out. What they're actually being taught is that maths is matching the reality. Therefore, it's a legitimate explanation, and you can be taught this as true.
Fine,
And
good
I'm
segue.
not sure that's a good position.
Good segue. Okay, so we've established what the old pseudoscience was, and now we're establishing what the current pseudoscience from the globe side is, and it's Einsteinian. So we've got that established. So let's go into that now. So what is the effect again?
It's the effect of the curvature of space-time. So what's space-time, Nathan?
I was going to ask you that, bastard leading me.
Space-time is nothing more than a mathematical representation of Einstein's visions, and they call it a concept, right? It has no experimental application anywhere, but they will give you a time dilation experiment, which we'll come to if we need to.
What?
But something that's conceptual, that
Experiment?
existed in Einstein's mind and represented purely mathematically with no experimental application, stops the conversation. It stops.
Excuse me, time
So-
dilation experiment? Really?
So
We'll
are you
come to
saying that the current theory of gravity would just be the bending of a conceptual medium?
That only ever existed in Einstein's visions, and it was represented mathematically and has no experimental application.
Shout out to Alexander, who says, maybe Cavendish's balls were attached to each other. Mine are not. Wink.
Concepts are easily bendable. It's just when you're going to equate that with
Yeah, so-
reality, you got the problem.
It's a serious question. Let me answer that question seriously. How do you manipulate a concept, or how do you manipulate the curvature of space-time? The answer
How do
is
you
maths.
bend the conceptual medium?
Yeah, the answer is mathematically, and only mathematically, because that's where it exists.
Okay.
So
Can I say
then when you
something?
have
Hold
proficient
Hold on.
people...
Conclusion time. So in conclusion, the current pseudoscience of gravity is the bending of a conceptual medium known as space-time that exists only in mathematics and came into existence from the mind of a man named Einstein. It does not in any way exist in physical reality. It is merely the conceptual medium mathematically described as pseudo-Ramonian force space. Correct?
Correct.
Okie doke.
End of discussion. So this is why I had a conversation with a guy called Jolyon Bloomfield, PhD, and Rumpus has also been in touch with him too. And I simply asked him, if gravity is not a force, what is it that makes Newton's apple initially start to move as it breaks its stalk and falls off the tree? And he ignored me and told Rumpus that I was basically trolling him with an on-topic question that he can't answer. and he's a PhD, and he's a PhD that specializes in general relativity. Yet he can't answer how Einsteinian gravity explains Newton's apple falling from the tree, because he thinks I'm trolling him. Now, if you don't need, that is the strongest citation I can give you. He specializes in Einsteinian gravity, but can't answer what is it that makes Newton's apple initially start to move. We all know what makes it move. It's just heavier than the air it sits in, and it gets too heavy for its stalk, and it snaps it. It's bloody obvious. That's what happens. But he can't even answer it, and he's got a PhD, and he teaches general relativity as his specialism in the Institute of Massachusetts, like MIT. It's just ridiculous.
Hey, Anthony,
So-
what did Verlinder
can have-
say?
It's misinformed. Because
can
we
have
never
all the-
claimed our hypothesis for gravitation in the first place, and could have just said it's relative density.
Yeah.
It's not
He
that.
won't-
Yeah, you can have
He's out of a
you
job.
can have all the PhDs in the world. It doesn't mean you know your job.
Right.
At the end of the
Anthony,
day,
what did Verlinder say though?
gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Chocolate,
No,
do you want
but-
to get the other one?
No,
that's
that's
not-
that's George Musa.
That's Musser. I'm talking Verlinder, the guy who said,
Eric Verlinder said, "We've known for a long time that gravity does not exist. It's time to start yelling it." Dr. Eric Verlinder from the University of Amsterdam, writing in 2015. So the current position is they know gravity does not exist. That happens to be our position. He's got an entropic view of gravitation, which I tend to agree with, but we both agree that gravity does not exist, and that's the key point. It doesn't exist.
so this PhD that thinks you're trolling him, does he think Eric Verlinder would be trolling him with that statement?
Probably. But when this PhD, Jolyon Bloomfield, thinks I'm trolling him, for the same reason why I didn't take him to task, which I could have done, and then started trolling him with actual science, against his views and whatnot. But it's the same reason why I never approached George Musa, because even though George Musa did not support Craig, even though Craig claims victory, George Musa basically is showing the world that gravity is not a force. Now, we all know it's not a force. And even if we think of it as a force, that still doesn't make it a force. And even if we calculate it and it happens to match the maths, that don't make it a force either, because force is defined. So the gravity conversation stops with the definition. And that's the quick way to kill any gravity point, because they can't concede that gravity is not a force, but they have to. So
Wait.
it stops.
Wait, so would it be considered doublespeak when somebody as proficient in the quote unquote scientific community as George Muser comes out and says a statement such as we can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force? Doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level.
He's pushing pseudoscience, trying to deceive people because it suits the official narrative that we live on a boat, because they know they can't concede gravity. They can't concede it. But Einstein's already done it in 1915. And that's why Julian Bloomfield from MIT cannot answer what makes Newton's apple fall from the tree. He can't do it. So it's his inability to answer the question that magnifies how fucked they are. And they just won't accept it. But it means that we win. They just don't accept it. But it's their story. They lose with their own definition for gravity.
Hey, Ranty.
So in essence, they give you the AOK for the doublespeak when they tell you things like gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's just training his underlings in doublespeak. That's all George Musa was doing.
Right.
You must remember,
it's not a
globers
force,
don't
but you
live in
can
reality.
fantasize about it. You know, if you want to.
Remember, globers don't live in reality. They claim to live in the matrix now.
It's a pity because all the ballers now won't come in, right? They claim that it's because Nathan's this, that, or the other. But what actually is the position is that the arguments are more and more refined. And we're all getting to the point where we can argue these consistently, accurately, and very precisely. And it kills their arguments. If you go and listen to Jose's chat, I went into Jose's his previous chats the other day, and I was listening to them talking about topics, and I was like, that's why they can't come in here, because they need to go to a safe space so that they can preach to those that want to accept the convenient lie. They can't go into Nathan's to talk about it because they know that their position is wrong, so they have to go somewhere else. So Jose's needed so that they can have their own church. That's the reason why their arguments fail, because they need a church to preach it in, and that's what Jose's chat is.
Well, they need to presuppose a lot in order to just finish a train of thought. And you can't really do that here without being pointed at the facts first.
I'm going to do a quick shout out. So shout out to Emma UK for hitting the super chat. She's also a videographer. She has a Discord server and does similar shows to these. So go and subscribe to Emma UK. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat.
Yeah, shout out.
out Emma.
Emma's cool.
Super cool.
So, are we all succinct with gravity? Do we all understand that it dies with the current definition and it stops there? It's a bit like when Rumpus was arguing for refraction on Ranties last night. And if you get him to define what refraction is, it doesn't mention curvy light. But in the context of gravity, that conversation stops at the current definition for gravity. It is the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. If you can get that on the tip of your tongue so that you don't need to read it and remember to focus on the word effect, then it stops the conversation dead.
Yeah, you don't even need to really argue with the Globers anymore. Essentially, they can do it for themselves. I mean, last night was a perfect example for this hour-and-a-half presentation with the Rumpus on refraction. And with just a few questions put in at the right point at the right time, the Rumpus put himself essentially in a position where it was almost untenable for him to reason out of it towards the end of the actual presentation. So when I was trying to apply the same logic he was using and the same mathematics he was using to a flat plane, yeah, somehow it didn't work. And it was so bloody obvious that I didn't even need to have an argument with him. I didn't have to have a debate with him. He basically unraveled it himself and everyone got to see it. It was beautiful. I gave him the spade and he dug.
And the best thing is he won't even realize that he's been beaten. And he'll tell people tomorrow the same stuff that he's told. How many times? They need to continuously drip feed this nonsense to people. That's why they keep coming back and they keep pushing this argument. Doesn't mean it's true.
Well, that's why he's got his opening line. I've always been right about everything I've said, and you guys are always wrong. So
yes, that's true. That's true.
What's
I'll
true?
speak to you, Anthony. Run your question.
I was just gonna say that sounds just like freaking with Brenda with her retarded shit.
Come on, Brenda.
Here you
no,
go.
Brenda said it.
Yeah.
I've
What are you
never
going to
said
fight
that.
about this time, Brenda?
Brenda talks with a different voice.
Brenda, did you figure out where the
Chocolate and
horizon
Arwen.
is yet in the
Guys.
Black Swan picture?
Hold on. Chocolate and Arwen. She's coming to just speak to Anthony. Give him a bit of space.
So, Brenda, have you got any evidence for where I've lied to you?
Yeah, I'll answer your questions. You think that you're an equal of a PhD? You're not the equal of a high school student.
Wait, this isn't. What is this? A pissing competition? Who
What
cares?
does he want?
Who cares?
What do you want?
Well, you've come in.
What do you
you've
want?
did you
Nice
just come
ad
in-
hom
Hold
stuff.
on. Did you just come in to ad hom him about his education level? Is that all you've come in for?
No. I want to answer Anthony's questions that he has
What's
about gravity, since that's the topic of your.
Fair enough.
What's gravity, Brenda?
Gravity is the bending of space-time.
Do you want to give us the proper definition?
It is the observed phenomenon that we see of things falling to the ground.
No, that's not the official definition. Allow me.
fine.
I'll do it. And
That's
if
good
you
enough.
think I'm lying, I'd like you to point out where I've got it wrong. Okay? It is the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Great. So, can you explain to me how Newton's apple falling from the tree was caused?
By the unequal distribution of mass, causing
I
space-time
see.
to bend,
All
thereby
right, so it's
causing
force pulling things down
the
then, no?
apple to
Hold on,
fall.
Anthony. I can't hear her answer.
What was that?
Can you repeat yourself, please, Brenda?
Oh, the apple falls because space-time has been warped, bent, distorted in such a way
Okay,
that
Great.
it
So
falls, right? Because of the unequal Okay, Anthony? You're
Can we agree that it wasn't a force that pulled it down then?
well, you can think of it as a force.
Yeah, buddy.
But it wasn't a force, though. Even though
that's
you
true.
can think of it as a force, it wasn't one. Can we agree that?
It depends. What do you define a force to be?
An interaction, a physical interaction, a push or a pull, consistent with any definition in physics.
Well, we don't actually know what gravity is
Yeah,
as
we do.
a
It's
thing in
defined.
itself. We only
We do.
have.
It's defined.
Sorry, just before we move on, Brenda is
I
asking
couldn't hear you.
He's just asking you to concede that it's not a force as per your original definition, and you're saying, well, we don't really know.
Well, we don't.
But that's not answering him.
A force is anything that gives an object a vector, and that's what
No.
the bending of space-time does.
No.
Is it gives
Any
objects
definition in
a
physics,
vector.
right? Force to be an interaction that is a push or a pull. That's the physics definition. We can do it if you want to. We get it on screen for the audience. But unless you can counter me with evidence to the contrary, a force is a physical interaction, a push or a pull. It's not what you just said.
Yeah, we don't have an interaction. That would be a particle-particle interaction. Nobody knows what it is that gravity is in itself, right?
So it's not a
All
force,
we
though,
have
right?
are descriptive theories about
No, he's
about
asking you.
gravity.
He's not asking
There
you
are
that.
proposed
He's not
theories
asking.
like.
You don't need your word
I'm
salad,
sorry?
Brenda. He's saying, given your definition and the description, it's not a force. He just needs you to say that's correct, or no, it's not a force. That's right. Words to that effect. Not endless diatribes about what it could be. It's not what he's asking.
It's a force because it gives objects a vector.
Sorry, you just said earlier it's not a force, and then you said we can think of it as one. So you're now.
Yeah.
So it's not a force then.
It's not a force in Newton's conception of a force, which was
Brenda,
spooky action at a
Brenda,
distance.
if it was actually a force, wouldn't it just be a force? Why would you need to think of it as a force? Unless
And
it wasn't
what's a
one.
Let's go back to the
What's a
definition for
force?
gravity. It is defined, Brenda. It is defined, and I'll say it again, as the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. Is it caused by a force, or is it caused by the uneven distribution of mass?
We don't know what it is about the uneven distribution of mass
Nobody asked.
that
That's
causes
not what he asked.
space-time
That's
to
not what he
bend.
asked. It's not what he asked.
We don't
Let's
know
do
what
it.
that is.
It's not what he asked.
Let's do it again, Brenda.
Try again,
It is
Anthony.
defined. The definition for gravity is defined. It has a current definition. It is from Einstein's theory of general relativity, the currently accepted position by science for gravity. And he says, quote, the gravity is the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. So I'll ask my question again,
Yeah.
Brenda. Is gravity a force given the current definition?
How does the uneven?
He didn't ask you for a question. He asked for a very straight, simple answer, and you're now asking him a question. This is a concession given your description at the beginning of this diatribe. So what I'm now going to do is summarise what's happening. Brenda can't concede the very position she described in her definition. So she's now going to obfuscate indefinitely, because essentially Anthony has now won. Gravity is not a force by their own definition.
It depends on what you mean by a force.
A push or a pull, that's been defined by Anthony. We've covered that. That's been covered.
Yeah, nobody knows.
No, we don't need to know what nobody knows. We know what it is when you describe a force. And this is not that.
It's defined,
Nobody
Brenda.
knows what gravity.
See, she can't concede it.
Nobody knows the
Hold on,
trouble
guys.
she is
Yeah,
seeing.
just so the audience knows what's
Nobody
happening.
knows but Brenda.
Yeah.
Right, so stop.
Let's just concede what's
This is what I was
actually
saying.
happening. Hold on, Anthony. I'm just going to summarise. I don't want to go around in circles for 25 minutes with Brenda telling you that it could be a force, but isn't a force, but is described as a force, but isn't actually a force, but we don't really know what a force is in this context. She's just conceding her loss with endless word salad and babble. Anthony's won. It's part of the current pseudoscience definition of gravity.
So this is why I was saying in the preamble. leading
Adults
to
don't
this
have winning. This is not winning.
We've won Brenda's lost. It's not a force. She needs it to be a force, so she's going to tell us we can think of it as a force. It isn't a force. She's lost. We've won. Now she wants to define the lines of what winning and losing is when she's lost. No, you've lost. Tough. You don't have to like it. It's not a force. It's defined as such in your current pseudoscience. You don't have to like it. You can parent your magician of George Musa's bullshit, telling us we can think of it as a force, even though it isn't one, which is Anthony's point. Therefore, his point is correct, and your endless babble about what is or isn't a force, or what is or isn't winning, isn't going to win you your point. It isn't a force. I thank you.
So,
Do you
at the
really
beginning
think
of the
this
show,
makes you
before
look
Brenda
good,
joined-
Nathan?
I
No,
think
wait a minute.
you're going to get shut up if you keep interrupting Anthony while he summarises your loss, because you're a sore loser. Stop
At the
bullying
beginning of
Anthony.
the show,
Stop
before
bullying
Brenda-
Anthony while he's trying to talk. Please, can you stop bullying him, Brenda, or I'll kick you out for bullying. Go ahead, Anthony. I won't let Brenda bully you.
And if you go back and if you rewind the time on this, I said that the whole argument stops with the current definition for gravity. And what do you know? Brenda joins, and we get to the current definition of gravity, and she cannot, will not, and refuses to concede that it is not a force, even though the current definition of gravity cites that it is the effect. And I want Brenda to admit and concede that it's an effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. She won't do it because she knows that she needs it to be a force, and she needs to obfuscate it to say that nobody really knows what gravity is. But unfortunately, it is defined, and your current narrative is that it's an effect. So, Brenda, I'll ask you again, do you concede that gravity is an effect?
Yeah, it is. I've already told you I agree with your definition that it's the uneven distribution of mass that causes the bending of space-time. I've already agreed with you. I
Okay, so
didn't
in
concede
future, I don't
anything.
want to be talking about gravity as though it's a force. Now, second point, can you address how Einstein would argue or explain how Newton's apple falls from the tree?
Einstein would probably say that the reason the apple falls from the tree is because the uneven distribution of mass has caused space-time to be warped, and therefore the apple, following its geodesic along space-time, finds itself in the on the
Excellent.
ground.
Right.
Have you seen space time being?
Hang on, wait, wait.
Hold on, Ranty, he's getting there. I
She's
want to
right.
do that too. Just kudos to Ranty, he spotted what's coming, but let Anthony do it.
She's right. That is the correct formulation for the answer as per Einsteinian gravitation, the current position of science. My next question, Brenda, which I wanted to answer and don't deflect from, is the curvature of space-time. How did he prove that the curvature of space-time was what we were seeing?
Prove that it was. I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so the answer is found by defining what is space-time. And there's a definition, it's defined. What is space-time, Brenda?
There's a formula for space-time, and I don't know it off the top of my head.
Sorry, hold on, Anthony,
Space-time.
hold on. No. When he says what is, I'm just going to clarify on Anthony's behalf. He means in physical, actual terms. So we don't want any abstractions and mathematics, please. Go ahead,
so
Anthony.
we've had the definition for gravity, it's defined. We've had the definition of force, it's defined. Space-time is also defined. Do you know what the definition for space-time is, Brenda? If not, I'll tell you.
Well, I don't know what definition you're going by.
I'm going by it's defined. Space-time is defined. Do you know what it is or not? If you don't, I'll tell you.
Go ahead and tell me.
She doesn't know what it is. Go ahead, Anthony. She doesn't
It's
know.
a conceptual medium represented mathematically with no experimental application.
So a conceptual medium, Brenda.
Demonstrated
What is a
mathematically.
conceptual medium? And
Not real, not actual, not physical. That's
And
what
it's demonstrated
conceptual means.
mathematically. So how do we, according to Einstein's current theory of gravity, how do we explain what happens with Newton's apple when it falls from the tree if the answer is defined as conceptual medium represented mathematically? What do we do?
Anthony, if I have a concept,
That's not
no-
what we need. We don't need questions.
No
We
questions
need to
or
know what's
questions.
happening, given that you've described concepts causing things, when these concepts themselves are defined as effects. So given that these concepts are defined rigorously, and Anthony's asking you what happens in actuality, we don't need a question. We just need an explanation of what's happening in actuality with this concept. Now, the problem here, Brenda, is that you can't describe what's happening in actuality when you're only defining conceptual mediums. Maybe you didn't appreciate that.
Mathematically as well. So what your answer, Brenda, has to be is a mathematical representation of the curvature of space-time, the concept that doesn't actually exist. But we do see an apple falling from a tree. So what my point now is that your current understanding for your current position and your current understanding for gravitation is that you've got to explain it mathematically because it's a conceptual medium that only exists in maths and it has no experimental application. But we do see an apple fall from a tree. So I'm going to put to you that you can't explain it in any sufficient way to explain why the apple falls from the tree because you only have maths to do it in a conceptual medium that doesn't actually exist.
You can have concepts of things that actually exist, Nate. And
Perfect. Maybe you can answer the super chat question from Alexander in that case then, Brenda. How much time there is in 1 cubic meter of space? Thank you for the super chat, Alexander.
yeah, the question is malformed.
It's physical, isn't it? So you can show it us in physicality. Is it not physical, this conceptual medium that we're pointing out that it has no actual effects in reality because it's conceptual? And you're saying it's a malformed question for us to ask to be shown physicality to this conceptual? Yeah, you're right, because it's conceptual. That's where your argument falls apart. Not malformed question, malformed because you can't do it. You can't show a conceptual medium in physical terms.
So when you joined, Brenda, you said
If
that
it's
you would answer the
conceptual,
question.
how do you explain frame dragging?
Who cares?
Sorry,
you joined.
Who cares?
And you said that you
Red
could
herring
answer my question.
fallacy. Red herring.
You know what a concept is? A concept is an idea.
Yeah.
How? So, based from that, formulate your next position.
Explain how the apple falls from the tree.
Can an idea be about a thing?
Can an idea cause something? Well, in this instance,
No.
we've got a conceptual medium. So let's focus on that. Not let's have some red herring question to us about concepts of a different description. So we've got a concept that you think causes stuff when it's even described in its own definition as an effect.
No, I don't think the concept causes things.
Well, so it doesn't. So gravity does not cause the apple to fall from the tree then?
Of course it does.
No, you've just said concepts don't cause things. Our point was conceded. And Anthony's point is that if you have a conceptual medium that's claimed to cause things, how the hell is it causing things? Your response, I appreciate that concepts don't cause things. Ergo, the concept of a bending time medium does not cause the apple to fall.
Right.
Yeah! So gravity's not a force. This is a bullshit made-up nonsense in mathematics, come from the mind of a man. Nothing to do with the physical existence that we experience.
It's a concept.
Yeah, not part of the physical experience then. Just a concept, an idea of gravity. Who gives a shiny shite about your ideas of bloody gravity? It's got sod all to do with the physical process of an apple falling down. Absolutely nothing.
The concept is about the real thing, Nathan.
Oh, really? And the concept about the real thing causes
Yeah.
the real thing to do something, does it?
No, the real thing does that. Not
Yeah, the real thing does that, but your conceptual idea of a cause being attributable is total nonsense because it's conceptual. So your ideas and musings, no matter how mathematically complex, have absolutely nothing to do with the actual occurrence. They're just musings, they're just concepts, they're not causes.
But do you know what makes
my
it even
concept
worse?
of a gun doesn't.
Hey, another
Brenda,
red herring.
give me-
Go ahead, Anthony. I can't be arsed with a red herring. Go ahead.
What makes it even more difficult is the fact that not only can you not formulate it in a conceptual medium as per Einstein's visions, you've got to do it mathematically because that's what space-time is, a conceptual medium represented mathematically. So I want to hear you mathematically describe what causes the apple to fall down using maths, because that's what your gravity is.
Concepts are about real things. Space-time is a real physical thing. It's a part of the universe.
Space-time is not a
concepts
real physical
are
thing.
about
Conceptual
the
medium,
real
Brenda.
thing.
Brenda, no. So this is where you're failing. The definition of space-time is defined. It is the conceptual medium. Maybe if Nathan could get it on screen so the audience can see it. The conceptual, just type in space-time definition on Google, Nathan. It should bring it up. It is the conceptual medium represented mathematically. It's conceptual medium represented mathematically. I've forgotten the last bit of it.
Anthony, I can have a concept about a thing, and those are two different things. The apple is a real thing, and my concept about the apple is an idea.
That's so nice. So you've got an idea about gravity in its relation to the apple, but the idea has no effect on the apple because it's just an idea. So while you muppets can think that you've got a force here, understand this. It's just an idea. It's not actually affecting the apple. It's not actually a force. It's not even designed in its own definition to be the cause of anything. It's an effect, based in maths, not in reality, and has no effect on anything in reality. It is as simple as that. Shout out to Julio Pabon. I did actually shout you out when I saw you in the Discord server, actually, Julio Pabon, for you sending me that graffiti that you made. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Nathan, I've left you an email in Nathan Oakley 1980 that I'm sure you will appreciate. I think that's the one I've just referred to, hopefully so. Oh, and Brenda lost this one. She should shop for a new purse to help her cope with yet another loss. Cheers. Thank you very much for the super chat, Julio Pabon. Really appreciate your support.
Nathan, present my screen, please.
Sure.
Let me know when.
You're on.
Okay, so space-time. This is where Brenda's failing with space-time, because to explain Newton's apple using the concept of space-time, you've got to do it mathematically, you've got to do it conceptually, and you've got to adhere to the definition. So all I've done is I've gone to space-time definition on Google, and then you can just read through them. But we'll go with this one. We'll go with the Wikipedia one because it's a general starting position written by ballers on a website that you can all put in whatever you want. It says in physics, space-time is any mathematical model. Well, we know what models are, reification fallacies. Mathematical, not real, which fuses the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time into a single 4-dimensional manifold. So, Brenda, I want you to formulate using a mathematical model the fusion of 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time into a single 4-dimensional manifold to explain how Newton's apple falls from the tree, please.
Do you understand that models are about things, that concepts and ideas are about things? I don't eat the concept of an apple, I eat the apple. But that doesn't mean I can't have a concept of an apple. So I can have a concept of space-time, but it's space-time that moves or that causes the apple to fall, or the bending of the space-time.
Shout out to Paul Hall, who says, how does space or time do anything?
I'm sorry, what?
How does space or time do anything?
Oh, well, mass tells matter how to move.
That's total shite. It's not got sentience. It doesn't tell
communicate?
anything. It's not telling
How do
anything
they
to do anything. It
communicate?
hasn't got lips. It's not got sentience. It's not communicating that.
How did they communicate? How did they talk to each other?
Yeah,
What
yeah, that's
language
called
do
the
they use?
reification fallacy.
No, it's not called a reification fallacy. It's called you talking bollocks. You've just said that they communicate with each other. One said to the other. No, they don't. They don't have lips.
Yeah, I never said they did.
Yeah, you did, you stupid fuckwit. Don't fucking lie. I heard you. I'm not deaf. You're going to point out how stupid you sound.
Yeah,
Yeah, you sound stupid when you talk about them communicating with each other. No, they don't communicate with each other. That's complete horseshit.
Yeah, space-time tells matter.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have lips. What's it do to write a fucking postcard?
Brenda,
That's a reification fallacy.
It's not a reification fallacy. It's your stupid idiocy. That's what it is. They're not having a little dialogue. Hello?
Brenda, I'm going to ask you again to explain.
I know. I didn't say they.
Brenda, listen, I want you to explain how Newton's apple falls from the tree, referencing space-time the way it's defined, to satisfy your belief that gravity was causing it. And you need to do it mathematically.
Well, what happens is that space-time will tell mass how to move because it deforms, the geodesics that objects fall or follow, right?
Okay.
So the reason the apple falls, here's the answer. The reason the apple falls from the tree is because the ground is in the apple's future.
Is it not because it's more dense than the medium it's in?
No, it's because being on the ground is in the apple's future. All things follow space-time geodesics, and the mass of the Earth tells space-time how to bend, and the apple follows that geodesic in a time-like manner. So its future
Hang on, wait a minute. So
brings it to the ground.
That's a really
wait a minute. I have a question. So are my feet in the future to my head?
They're traveling there's a difference. So they're standing in a gravitational field. There is mathematically, you probably couldn't measure it, but there's probably a difference in time between your head and your feet.
Okay. So I'll give you credit for formulating it as per the definition. You've done a reasonable job, and our credit is given. However,
you know what?
Go on. She's going to bully you. She's decided that your response is going to be her response. So please don't bully the other guests, Brenda. Thank you.
I was just going to say credit is given for formulating an Einsteinian explanation for why the apple falls from the tree. It's complete mumbo jumbo. Nobody understands it or agrees with it, but at least you've had a go at doing it. And it sounded like poetry. It was beautiful, Brent. Well done. However, you still have an apple falling from the tree.
Run it by your PhD.
I'll just try again. Please, can you stop bullying the other guests? I don't know why you feel you have this entitlement to bully the other guests. Please stop doing it. Stop it, bully boy.
So, my question is...
bully boy! Can you stop it, please, bully boy? The other guest is speaking. Stop bullying the other guests or I'll eject you for bullying. Last warning, stop bullying the other guests, bully boy.
Brenda, just give me a minute. I'm giving you credit for giving a reasonable Einsteinian explanation, right? Credit is given. What I want you to do is... bollocks, what I was going to say.
Show mathematically how...
Yeah. I want you to express this mathematically, because what you've done is eloquently described it, and I'll say it was poetry. You haven't done it mathematically, but what I want to ask you is this is where I was going. What I want to ask you is, why is Occam's razor dismissed in this context? Because it is obvious that the apple is more dense than its medium, yet you want to go down some poetry explanation about how space-time's warping and time dilating and all this stuff, which is lovely. It does sound beautiful when you word it the way you did. But why do you dismiss Occam's razor when we know that the apple is more dense than the medium it's in? And if it was less dense, it would rise like my egg did. Why do you dismiss Occam's razor?
Because density can't give anything.
Density can't give anything what?
Density can't give things a vector. Density is just mass per unit volume.
You're right. Density alone doesn't give a vector. You're right. It's a scalar, and on its own, it doesn't give direction, and it doesn't give magnitude. But when you have two things that are
Thank
next
you.
to each other and you have a disequilibrium between them, we get displacement, and we can manipulate that, and we can prove that the cause is the thing that we manipulate. It's within scientific method as the independent variable.
So we can. Sorry, Anthony. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've just got a couple of questions. Did the apple travel through time or air? Which was the medium? Was it a conceptual medium that it travelled through, or was it an actual medium that had a relative density value with respect to the apple? Was it a conceptual medium that it travelled through, or a physical medium? Which one was it?
Well, we're all traveling.
Is your name Anthony? Is your name Anthony?
We can't.
Sorry.
we can't
Excuse
help-
me, bully
we
boy.
can't help.
Bully boy. Yeah, I asked Anthony whether the apple, in his example, travelled through a conceptual medium known as space-time, or a real medium that has values that he can attribute to it. I'm just asking him which the apple's travelling through. A concept or something actual with values that we can...
It fell through an actual medium called Nathan.
Oh, right. It didn't fall through a conceptual medium?
No.
Oh, so why would we want to qualify and ignore the conceptual? Why would we want to qualify the conceptual medium and start doing mathematics on that when it's fallen through an actual medium that has a relative density value, Anthony?
I have no idea, Nathan. I don't know why anybody would want
Brenda.
to do that.
Why would you start worrying about its position in space-time, which is a concept, when it's travelling through a real, legit, genuine, measurable medium?
It's almost as if they
Not
want
you,
to
Anthony. You had your chance. It's not travelling through a concept, Brenda. It's travelling through an actual medium. So why would we qualify it with a conceptual medium when it's not travelling through that?
Density is a concept.
That's not what I asked. I asked why you want to qualify this transition from tree to ground as though it's travelling through a conceptual medium that you'll then give us the maths for, and disavow, ignore, eradicate the actual medium that it travels through. The reason this is being asked is Anthony has qualified it with actual physical things that we can measure, and you're saying, no, I've got an idea of a medium that it's travelling through called space-time, and I'm going to talk about what it's in its future in these concepts. And Anthony's saying, no, it's just more dense than the medium it's in. So I'm asking, given that he's qualified it with actual physical things, why we would need to qualify the medium it travels through when that medium isn't real, is simply conceptual. Why do we need to mathematically qualify that at all?
The apple doesn't travel through a concept. It travels through the actual thing.
So therefore, we don't need
that's
to
a
worry
problem.
about, if it doesn't travel through the concept of space-time, then we don't need to worry about measuring it or attributing, certainly don't need to attribute any causal relationship with this then, do we?
Yeah, because it means that you have to dismiss Einstein.
Hold on, Anthony,
Well, no-
I'm asking Brenda. We definitely don't need to attribute causal relationships if it's not travelling through mediums. They're just ways of thinking about things. They can't possibly cause stuff then, can they?
Concepts can't cause things, but real things.
So the concept of gravity isn't causing the apple to fall then, because concepts can't cause things.
Right, just like
Right. So gravity ain't causing anything, love. So that's the end of this argument. Gravity's just your idea about stuff. A medium you have things fall through for some reason when they actually travel through air. Well, your religious ideas about things aren't concerning us. We have actual mediums we can qualify in physicality, rather than your not actual mediums that you think apples are falling through, and then for some ridiculous reason think that those conceptual mediums you think the apples are falling through are actually the cause of something. Well, that's simply preposterous. It's absolutely ludicrous.
there's the concept and the actual thing itself.
Yeah, the concept definitely isn't causing the thing itself. The thing itself's travelling through a medium, the medium of air. But you're saying we can qualify that as though it's travelling through the medium I can conceptualise it with. That would be space-time. It ain't travelling through that, it's just an idea you've got. So let's not worry about the cause being space-time and a geodesic in relation to it, when that's just an idea about what it's travelling through. It's actually travelling through air and is more dense than that air. Simple.
even if no humans existed and had no concept.
Red herring. Couldn't give a shit about no humans existing. That's got nothing to do with gravity and vectors that are concepts, and definitely not the medium that the apple's travelling through. Red herring.
Brenda, if you
Space-time would still exist even.
Shut up. Space-time doesn't exist. It's a concept. So
Brenda.
it doesn't exist. It has no physicality. Don't just circle jerk us back to the beginning where you assert that this conceptual medium is a physical thing doing stuff. It isn't. It's your way of thinking about the medium the apple's travelling through when it's really travelling through air. Okay?
Nathan, give me one sec.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Brenda, if you agree that it isn't actually falling through a conceptual medium and it's actually falling through real air instead, then you're actually you're not applying Einstein. You're admitting that Einstein doesn't apply because the medium does physically exist. But you can't do that because you must adhere to Einsteinian gravity to have the argument for gravity. So you can't dismiss Einstein. You must apply it. So for you, the medium doesn't exist. It's conceptual, and we want to see your maths for it, please.
I'm not dismissing Einstein, and I have concepts about things.
But you admitted that the medium did exist, and you didn't. You admitted that the conceptual idea of the medium you didn't really follow, unless you've changed your position.
He said concepts can't cause things. Hold her feet.
Yeah, I'll gladly admit it. Concepts can't cause anything.
Well, space-time's a concept, so it does not cause anything. That is, as declared earlier, while I get rumpused. Of course, get rumpused. That's the conclusion. So everyone else pipe up immediately while I point that out. Yeah, that's the conclusion. Concepts don't cause things, as admitted by Brenda. So space-time, that's a concept. So it is not causing anything. Conclusion is drawn. Shout out to Paul Hall. How does math do anything? It doesn't. It's an abstraction. Not reality,
Ding, ding,
not
ding.
physical. Abstract.
And that's the end of the round.
And that, boys and girls, is how to defeat ballers with gravity. Just use their own definitions and make them stand by them.
And with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on Nathan Oakley 1980, this is where I bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. As I say, stay tuned if you're watching on the premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!